Thanks for tuning in to watch The Ordinary Filmmaker. I hope you're having a great week, and I hope you and your family are safe. In this video, I'm going to talk about all the major news that came out in the stills, hybrid, and video camera world this week. And then I'm going to take you a little bit behind the curtain, behind the scenes, and we're going to talk a little bit about the direction I'm going to take this channel. Are you guys interested in me bringing back the Q&A weekly series that I had? Or what about the live stream? What are your thoughts? What do you think I should do? All this coming up. Our first story is all about 8K cinema cameras. 8K cinema cameras that Canon's planning on bringing out. NAB 2021 was recently cancelled, and there's no surprises that Canon was planning an 8K cinema camera announcement. No surprises? Well, that's because going back earlier this year, Canon Japan, their marketing department, did release a video on YouTube showing in depth this camera, talking about their capabilities at a conceptual level and showing the camera, a pre-production model, in work. So, since NAB has been canceled, Canon is probably going to book a virtual announcement sometime probably within the next 2 weeks. And we're not getting one 8K cinema camera, we're actually getting two. And what are the main differences? I'm not going to go into a stunning level of detail because, well, I produced this video earlier this week, and it goes into a lot of detail. But essentially, the 500S is a full frame camera, whereas the 300S is a Super 35. Now, both use a back illuminated stacked DGO sensor. And in terms of dynamic range, well, the full frame version, the 500S, has 17 plus stops of dynamic range. Doesn't mean it has 18. It has 17 and a bit, I guess. Now, the Super 35 has 16 stops of dynamic range, and the pixel size is also a little bit different. On the full frame version, it's about 4.65 micrometers, and on the Super 35, it's, let me check my notes here, 3.2 micrometers. So we get two 8K cinema cameras. But wait, there's more. Canon's also expected to announce a 4K cinema camera. Now, this camera looks to be, I think, the real crowd pleaser here. Now, there are people, yes, that need 8K video. There are people who shoot only in 4K, but like to be able to punch in, or I should say they deliver in 4K, so to be able to shoot in 8K and then punch in later is a very useful tool. So let's take a look at the 4K version. It is a full frame camera, and it's capable of up to 240 frames per second, and that's in what they call fast mode. Now, in wide mode, or WDR mode, it's capable of only 180 frames per second, but this is a definite step up from the 120 frames per second that we see in a lot of Canon's cinema and stills hybrid cameras today. Other benefits, or capabilities, I should say, it's going to have the same back illuminated stacked DGO sensor, but this camera, are you ready for this? It can produce a staggering 20 stops of dynamic range. That just has me super excited. I'd love to see that many stops in the R5 Mark II, for example. When I got the R5, I first started shooting in 8-bit mode. I wanted to just get used to the camera. And when I brought the video in, I thought, it was okay. It looked good. It was certainly more detailed, but I wasn't totally impressed with it. And then I started shooting in C-Log. Now, we only had C-Log 1 back then, and I noticed a definite improvement, but I felt like I was constantly arguing with the camera trying to grade C-Log 1. It was my first time really dealing with log footage, and a full frame, and a professional camera. Long story short, I've pretty much finished up a 1-year film that I produced, and it was all shot in 4K C-Log 3. And it looks incredible. And it really looks great when C-Log 3 came along, because grading became a whole lot easier, especially when shooting in low light. And I was just staggered when I went back and looked at my previous video where I shot in 8-bit, the difference, seeing that dynamic range, whether you're in a bright area or a low light area, being able to pull that detail out of the shadows. It's really great when you're shooting a landscape and you've got some hedges to the side. It's really nice to be able to see the detail in the shadows and the midtones instead of just seeing, you know, a really great variation in green hues on the top where the sun is hitting it and then nothing but black. Or basically there's no information there. I couldn't even pull anything out. And then shoot in log to have that information. 20 stops of dynamic range over 14 makes a huge difference. Next time you go outside, take a look around. Pay careful attention to the details that your eyes are able to see, especially on a sunny day. And that's what 20 stops of dynamic range can provide. So I think that's the real killer feature of this camera. It is going to have dual Digic DV8 sensors, as are the other two cameras. And what about price? Well, I was talking to James Jackson Films, and he suggests the following prices. For the C300S, he expects $16,000 or thereabouts. For the C500S, $20,000 to $25,000. And for the C700DR, a whopping $35,000 or more. So these cameras definitely aren't going to be cheap. And that probably leaves you wondering, what about the Canon R5c? Well, we don't know. But I'd be really curious about that camera. To deliver the same video specs as the Canon R5 in a cinema body with active cooling, more codecs. You know what I'm thinking, right? Where's the cripple hammer going to strike? But I don't have any news on the R5c. Nothing new has come out. So let's move on to our new news topic. Sony Alpha Rumors gave us a lot of good information this week. The first thing they published was on, they call this a wild rumor, which I think is just a way to get some eyeballs. There's no news. So let's put something out for you guys to sort of just chew, and talk about around the virtual water cooler. And that's the FX9 Mark II. It's been about 2 years since the FX9 came out, and they say that, well, we should be getting a refresh later this year. That's not completely implausible, but, you know, we had to wait 5 years for the A7S III last year, and we're waiting over 3.5 years for the A7 IV, so 2 years for the FX9 Mark II. That's plausible, but I wouldn't consider it to be a high priority for Sony. What has me completely staggered is these rumored specifications, and why I believe this is completely unvalidated and nothing more than somebody writing something in to see if they could get their story published. I want to make sure I don't miss anything here, so I'm going to reference my sheet here. It's going to have a new sensor. That's not surprising, but they say it's going to be a DCI 4K HDR back illuminated sensor. Okay, the FX9 had a 6K sensor. It didn't produce 6K video, but it produced 6K oversampled 4K. And as one of you aptly put in the comment section, what? They're going backwards? We're not going to get 6K, we're getting 4K? No, I don't believe it for 1 minute. What the market is definitely seeing, as you saw with the Canon cameras, is 8K. And it's not just Canon. The Alpha 1 came out with 8K. So we got the R5 with 8K. We got these new cinema cameras with 8K. Any high-end camera, any camera at least north of $4,000 is going to have 8K or at least 6K. I can't see Sony coming out with the FX Mark II with just 4K video. It doesn't make any sense. Other things that don't make sense is, while it can produce 4K 120 frames per second, it's supposed to be externally, and that requires the $2,500 external recorder. And we do get a new external recorder with this camera. Yeah, you know what? At this price point, Sony, we really expect it to be internal, and I'm sure that the Mark II is going to have internal recording of those frame rates just to keep up with the competition. And the other thing mentioned in this rumor is to provide an Area Alexa look. Whenever I see these types of comments to provide a red raw look or an Area Alexa look, to me, it's not anything serious, because if you really want to get a red look or an Area Alexa look or Canon Colors look, you're going to buy the aforementioned camera. There's not much in this rumor. I would basically discount this one. But the next item we're going to talk about, the A7 IV, there's a little bit more credibility and validity to this one. All the rumors have been for many months now pointing to an October announcement of the A7 IV. Is that going to happen? Well, the latest by Sony Alpha Rumors says, sure, October, mid to late October, assuming that we can get enough components, chips and whatnot. Great. So here we are a month away from the presumed announcement, and they're already tossing water on this. I'd imagine at this point somebody in Sony has already made the decision to go forward with it or not. And if there's component shortages, well, that would have been factored in already and they would know. So what this is telling me is get ready for an announcement later than October. But again, it's a rumor, and everything I'm going to say here, please take it with a grain of salt, because what we've found with any rumor from Sony, regardless of the source, Sony Alpha rumors, Sony rumors, new image, etc., they don't have a very good track record, and that's simply because Sony does a very good job of keeping their information at home, not leaking it. So it's very hard to validate and get accurate information. Even the rumors that we had of the A7S III right up to its launch, while they got a lot of it correct, they got several things wrong. So let's take a look at more details about what we can expect in the A7 IV. Now, what they did announce is that this camera is supposed to have 15 stops of dynamic range. It's going to have the same body as the A7S III and have the same heat sink as well. And one other thing that has me a little bit wondering here is when Sony Alpha Rumors put out the information, they didn't pull out a full batch validating or comparing it to the previous rumors they put out. They just put out about 5 different rumors, and one of them is that it's going to have 7K 4K video in 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. And this would be terrific. This would actually provide more detail than the A7S III, which would potentially cannibalize that camera. And I'm cautious here because when it comes to cannibalization, that's not Sony's game. Sony's only planning, and they've said this, they're only planning on announcing cameras and devices and accessories that will make money. With the A7S III only being released last year, I'm a little bit doubtful that they're going to cannibalize the camera. But for now, the rumor says 7K oversampled 4K. But they didn't mention anything about 4K 60. And one of you said, if they go ahead and release the A7 IV without 4K 60, it's not going to bode very well. And I agree. I'd be surprised if this camera doesn't have 4K 60, but I'd also be surprised if they issue 7K oversampled 4K. For a video person, this would seem, to me, more appealing than the A7S III. After all, it's got the same size body, the same heat sink, the same thermals, and it's got those 4K video modes. The only question is, 4K 120? I would doubt that. But what would you do? Would you choose to get the A7 IV or the A7S III if you're a video person? Which of the specs in the A7 IV would have you choose that camera over the A7S III or even the cinema version, the FX3? Now, one thing that really bothers me about these specs is it's supposed to have that 1.44 million dot LCD. I'm still kind of shocked that they put it in the Alpha 1. It's several $100s cheaper than the 1DX Mark III. They could have put it in. They could have put in the 2.36 million dot LCD, and I think they should have. Coming in a little cheaper than Canon, to me, is a silly thing. The resolution, it makes a huge difference. 1.44 million dots, I definitely hope it's not in there. Now, this camera does have the new menu system, but that old LCD kind of bothers me. So to round it up, this camera is going to cost around $2,499. It's going to have dual card slots, Type A CF Express and UHS-2 card slots. And again, it's supposed to be available sometime around mid to late October, or at least announced. I don't think it'll be available around the announcement date. And that's what Sony might choose to do. Sorry, I got an itch here. That's what Sony might choose to do. They might choose to go ahead and announce it and then release it many months later. The Fuji X-H2 is going to have several improvements. Now, no surprising that they're going to improve the autofocus, and they're also going to improve, well, the overheat. You're not going to be limited to 15 minutes in 4K anymore. And yeah, we've heard so much discussions about overheating lately, and with these cameras producing 4K 30, 60, and above in such a small body, it's some time has to be spent on thermals. And just saying, you know, we're only going to give you 15 minutes when companies like Sony don't have any limits, and Canon, despite all the noise, is able to deliver at least 30 minutes in 4K HQ without overheating. Also, this camera is supposed to have a 40 megapixel sensor. So the Fuji X-H2 looks to be a very, very solid camera. I do hope they improve upon battery life, and I hope we see this camera relatively soon. As far as price goes, well, I'm not exactly sure, but I would assume somewhere around $21.99. Now, when the X-H2 was released, I believe the price was what, $18.99? So I think around adding another $300 to the price will, well, it's kind of expected with what we're seeing. Nothing is being dropped in price, well, except for the C300 Mark III. That was kind of surprising when Canon announced that for $10,999. We expected it to be a little bit more, but everything else has definitely gone up in price. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you behind the scenes. You'll notice I didn't do the live stream yesterday, and the reason for that is, well, my wife got a new job, and when she comes home is right in the middle of when I do the live stream, and because we only have one car, sometimes I have to pick her up. So it's really thrown a wrench into the works. I'm unable to deliver that live stream on Friday nights between 8 and 10 o'clock reliably, consistently. So I'm having to rethink that whole idea. I really do love doing the live streams. So to help mitigate that, I'm back in the studio basement shooting regular videos and doing those more frequently, but I still want to do live streams. So I'm going to rethink things a little bit. Maybe I do them on Sunday, and this is where I want your help. Do you like the live streams? What content do you like me to deliver in live streams? Let me know in the comments section down below, because the squeaky wheel gets addressed. Are you okay if I just don't do the live streams? Would you like me to do news for like I'm doing right now in the studio pieces, and maybe do a live stream on Sunday, or maybe another day of the week? What about Monday? Let me know in the comments section down below. And I still want to do interviews as well with people like Gordon Lang or Dan Watson, and I like doing that news panel an awful lot. So let me know what your thoughts are there. Every so many weeks, months, I do kind of reevaluate what I want to get out of this channel, what my goals and objectives are, and what I want to try and deliver. And I've thought about that recently. I still think that for me personally, the ability to learn is the single most important thing. And I've learned an awful lot over the past year. Shooting with the R5, it's such a more capable camera than the 70D, but going from a consumer hobbyist camera to a professional camera, the learning curve has been steep, and you've seen me make numerous mistakes. Now, this is my second attempt of setting up in the basement. My lighting is a whole lot simpler. I've got some great lights on me here. I've got the Colbor 100 or CL100. It's a terrific light with a diffuser on it, and I got a simple ring light here. And then, of course, I got multiple of these lead-colored lights behind me, and they do a really good job, and I'm pretty happy with the scenario. I've got a small little desk here, so when I want to show things off, I can do that. And the rest of the time, because I'm shooting with 4K HQ, I can just punch in a little bit more so that I and the studio here fill the frame. And I'm pretty happy with the look. I'm pretty happy with how things look and sound. And once I've got that set up, I don't have to do too much. So if breaking news comes out, even if it's 10 o'clock at night, I realize, okay, I just have to go downstairs, turn the lights on, and deliver the news. Whereas before, I'd have to set the lights up, go outside, do whatever, and it became an awful lot of effort. But when I get reviews, or when I get products to review, I want to take those outside, because that's where I really learn. That's where I have a lot of fun. But I don't want to be shooting outside all the time, because then that takes away from time where I want to shoot my own personal stuff, which is where I learn an awful lot from too. And I want to grow the channel enough, because since about April, the revenue on the channel has just completely crashed as I've been playing around and trying new things, which means I've only been able to buy one thing, and that was the Canon RF 100mm f2.8 macro lens. And there's a lot I want to purchase for this channel, but I need to be able to show the revenue to be able to produce it. This, while it isn't any serious business, I promised my wife that whatever money I spend on the channel isn't going to come away from our regular family accounts. So I've set up a separate account. As money comes in, I save up and I buy certain things. I'd like to buy the Hero 10. The R3 is definitely way out of reach, but you know, I would love someday to have a Sony in here, like the A7 IV, the A7S III, the FX3, and not just have one system. So let me know what you think of that. Let me know what improvements you think I can make. I do listen to what you guys say. I don't always follow it right away, but I take note. And for those of you who have been here for about a year or so, you know that I listen. You know that I'm constantly changing. And one other thing, I'm thinking of bringing back the weekly Q&A video where I ask you for your questions and I answer them in a pre-recorded video. Now, doing 10 plus questions is an awful lot of work while I've got an M1 MacBook Air. It just takes too long to edit, publish, and get out the door. So for now, until I can upgrade, I'm looking at doing maybe just 5 questions. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section down below. But most importantly, please go ahead, reach over to your phone, your laptop, and subscribe, comment. It really does help this channel grow. And I don't understand YouTube's algorithm. Not a lot of people do. But the more you comment, the more you like and subscribe or dislike, the more the videos are exposed to others to enjoy and like and subscribe. But that's all I have to say for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to watch. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.